Kia ora koutou. Welcome back to School Briefs. If you can hear an echo, it's 100% Claire's fault. It's
Technology's failing me this morning, Liam.
but you're here and you're framed up well, and there's beautiful photos behind you as well.
Yeah, they're good, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're all vintage Venice Beach skateboarding photos.
For anybody that follows your Facebook page, that doesn't block out. How are you feeling at the end of the world's longest term?
I'm feeling okay, actually. We finished our 11-week term with the school ball on Friday night, and that was an absolute banger. And it was really lovely. I sort of came away from it just reflecting on this. There's all of these things that are said about the current generation and all the struggles they're going through and stuff around self-regulation and all the rest of it. And honestly, you couldn't have a more delightful, polite, well-behaved group of young people at a ball if you tried. Like, I compare it to what it used to be like for us when we were, back in the 90s when I had my school ball, and they were absolute mayhem. I look at these young people now and they are just so delightful, so lovely. They had an absolute blast, and like, they thanked the DJ at the end of the night. They came up and thanked me and the other senior leaders at the end of the night and said, thank you to staff for coming. It was just like, there was like several points where staff kept going, looking at each other going, they're so damn wholesome. This is so damn wholesome.
Yeah.
It was lovely.
Is the general formula still exactly the same, where there's like you turn up in a flash car, you're wearing some kind of flash clothes, there's some catering and dancing?
Yeah. So less of the flash cars. That doesn't seem to be so much of a thing these days. It seems to have petered out, but definitely dressed up to the absolute nines, spray tan, nails, hair, makeup, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And then really good buffet catering, and the DJ. He was sort of he was of the ilk of Captain's. Do you remember Captain Starlight? They used to do discos. I don't know if they were a thing in the regions, but they were a thing definitely here in Auckland, where it was just like the greatest hits of all the terrible wedding music you can think of. The kids were going off to the Macarena and Come On Eileen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There
but no, it
was,
was good. It was a great night, and the kids were awesome, and and some of them were clearly heading off to after parties and after balls. But in terms of their behaviour and how they were at the ball, they were an absolute delight. And it's sort of, I don't know, you have those moments where I worked out it was something like my 28th year of school balls as a teacher and a leader, and I just thought, man, young people are freaking awesome. Like, they're such good people. They are articulate. They are well behaved, and for the most part, they are incredibly well behaved, and they are polite, and they know how to have a great time. So I hate all this narrative that we get so often around. I'm the first to admit around the challenges around self-regulation, and COVID hit young people and definitely left a mark in terms of their well-being and their anxiety. But, the way, if we were to listen to our minister and the way she talks about declining results and all the rest of it, it's really not evident in our young people day to day. They are so onto it, so articulate, so, great in school, great in the classroom, and then you put them in a social situation. And I dare say they were a hell of a lot more mature and a lot more better behaved than we were back in the day. We keep talking about the good old days. I mean, we were a bunch of mongrels sometimes in the early 90s and all the rest of it, because this generation doesn't drink in the same way either. I mean, I have no doubt that they'll go out and they'll go and party post ball, but there's not that evidence of that same absolutely raucous culture that we had. And part of me is kind of sad for them in the sense that I think social media has meant they edit their behaviour and curate their behaviour and lives a bit. But at the same time, like, the narrative from the minister and the ministry about these young people and what they're like day to day, and when you see them heading out into the world, just doesn't stack up. They're awesome.
yeah, and I guess that there is that mix of like one bad example just goes viral now.
Yeah.
And it kind of like distorts the actual size of the issue, because you're right. All of the kind of studies suggest that alcohol companies are feeling very, very nervous about the next generation of people coming through. But as I was listening to you, the bit that that keeps me is so much of the narrative around education today is
Yeah.
deeply caught up in the kind of good old days and this
Yeah.
kind of thinking of looking back in kind of rose-tinted glasses around how we used to have this kind of pinnacle of education that we kind of need to return back to. And I guess the risk with that is is that is that I suspect it means that we're just going to be making the same mistakes that we made before
Absolutely.
in the way that we
Yeah,
go
yeah.
about setting the conditions for teaching and learning.
Yeah, because I mean, and because I got really, I got a bit cross with some people on, I think it was over on Disrupted because we were talking about the data and people were going back, back in, the 80s and 90s, it was, this and that and all the rest of it. And I said, you forget back in the 80s and 90s and earlier than that, so few people made it past the gates of School C and Sixth Form Certificate and bursary. That the good old days was the good old days for a very privileged few. And
Yeah.
that really frustrates me that people forget actually there was a whole lot of people that were shut out of school and shut out of education. And I'm like you. I really worry that if the reforms go through as they are, particularly the senior secondary assessments, we're going to see that happening again. We're going to see whole legions of young people shut out of those final years of high school. Anyway, we haven't even got into our topics. Our
Oh, but
topics for
hey,
today, Liam.
speaking of the good old days, and it's a little bit tangential, but so many of the good old days are lining up behind New Zealand First. Your debate buddy Michael Laws has just been announced as a candidate. In that interview that you did with him around the merits of the NCA, I still remember that because I think he came in with that kind of shock jock vibe around wanting to
Oh,
put you into like
100%.
the questions, but you did such a good job around putting back why don't we want a secondary school qualification that's inclusive as possible
Yeah.
and makes pathways and opportunities for all of our kids.
And can I remind listeners that as this man steps back into Parliament, that one of his comments in one of my interviews was that Te Tiriti of Waitangi was a cult.
Gross.
You know, is that who we want in Parliament?
The
Lordy,
good old
I hope
days,
not.
eh? Yeah. Hey, but we've got a couple of things to go over today. We've obviously seen the triumphant release of the SMART reports. And I'm looking forward to the analysis. I mean, they were literally released on the last day of the term.
Yes.
My own kids' schools have delayed mid-year reports into term three. As a result, I'm hearing lots of other schools haven't just they just haven't gone anywhere near them, and they're just carrying on with their own ways of reporting to parents. Because I think very few schools are willing to be kind of guinea pigs in something that I think directionally has got major concerns around this kind of obsession with national testing. But also all of the kind of early stuff is talking about the range of issues with the tool itself.
Yeah.
And so the other bit in this that I'm really interested to watch is how parents are going to respond to the obsessive use of AI in the development of these.
Yeah, because consistency nearly always comes at the expense of whether the comments actually reflect the learner. Like even nuanced, pulling from comment banks and what have you, still don't do the same thing as capturing, a learner the way a teacher could.
Yeah, and I think the bit that we should be careful about isn't around the first couple of iterations of them, where teachers might be quite deliberate, but it is kind of this kind of shortcut culture
Yeah,
of if all of this stuff is kind of mass produced, how do you continually ensure that these are fair reflections of students 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road? And what I think we do risk is this ability of becoming like um, word count rich because you can just like pump out these super detailed
oh,
reports.
and
Uh,
standardized and longer doesn't mean better. It
yeah, that's
really
right.
doesn't.
And
You know.
and in actual fact, we risk alienating parents further because we're not actually developing reports that actually meet the needs because
Yeah.
everything's mass produced.
Yeah. And I heard there was some quite snappy badges one could add to their reports that were produced as well.
When I first saw them, I thought somebody was like taking
Joking?
out of them um, because
Do you not want a kapai to Atara?
it isn't just that; it's the butterflies. It, it's this it's this little cartoon dog that says "awesome." Um, but it isn't just those. And so, for people that haven't seen them, you can kind of attach stickers to a particular comment. Um, it is how badly designed these stickers are. They look like they were designed in like Microsoft Publisher in the 1990s.
Someone didn't quite get the word art lining right. You know, remember word art? Word art used to be the best when you could curve it.
But graphic designers out there are going to be like shuddering because there's like basic rules of like they've got this like dark brown kiwi sitting on this dark purple background, and so visually you can't even see it. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were like super worried about. To be honest, they were probably AI generated.
Yeah.
Looking at the rest of the tool, but yeah. I think we're going to see Kapai Tuatara for a bit.
Yeah, Kapai. It's a genuine Kiwi report. That one. Now it's got a Kapai Tuatara on it.
That's right.
Can't
Yeah.
you can't debate that now, Liam.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's a clear demonstration that the tool's not copied and pasted from Australia because they don't have Tuataras over there.
Excellent. Do you reckon it used to be the what would their one be? It would be a koala. They would have had koalas, eh? You know, maybe
Kangaroos.
kangaroo.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Hey,
And so, what else? We've had some announcements happening in the ECE space as well this week, haven't we?
yeah, there was the post-budget announcement around the Enrich program rolling out to, I think, close to 600 ECE centres.
Yeah.
This is one that's been trialled over the last year or two.
And this
in
one
Australia.
is a New Zealand developed one, which is a positive. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag because I think at its core, this idea around a much greater focus on oral language, totally on board with. But because it gets like dressed up by this government, it's all centered around this kind of language around school ready,
Yeah.
and the onus is on like parents and ECE teachers to make sure that when kids get to their first year of primary school, that they're ready to go, and that the blame needs to be sitting on the early childhood sector for not getting them there, as opposed to the idea that schools are kid ready,
Yeah.
capable of taking kids with a range of different skills. And so, I mean, on one hand, I like to see investment in oral language. I personally think that's way more important than the emphasis we're seeing on writing right now,
Yeah.
given the way the world's going. Um, but similar to everything we're seeing rolled out in primary, it's just more programs rolling out as opposed to that investment in teachers' PLD.
Yeah, I know that Sarah wrote a great piece for AEC earlier in the week, and that highlighted the fact that, yep, there were strengths to the program, but without the correct staffing ratios, it was actually an unrealistic ask in terms of if it could actually be rolled out in an impactful way, because it does rely, that back and forth is absolutely integral, absolutely important, and no one challenges that. But having a strategy rolled out isn't the same as having the staffing or the support resources rolled out that actually enable that to take place meaningfully.
That's right. And
Yeah.
and now we get to brace ourselves for a kind of barrage of backbench national MPs doing Facebook tiles, talking about wanting to deal to the decline of oral language skills in ECE.
And can I just give a shout out to the closing? If you haven't read that article on ASE, go back and read it, because the closing paragraphs highlighting the amount of te reo that's woven throughout that program is quite hilarious. I mean, the irony of, such a te reo rich, which is absolutely fantastic, program being sort of, announced and shouted about when someone seemed to be very afraid that those early readers had more than a handful of te reo words was going to somehow unstick them in their reading journey. So I enjoyed the mic drop moment at the end of that piece that highlighted the vast quantity of te reo that's woven through that particular Enrich program, which is awesome.
That's right. Although I doubt they're going to get any Kapai Tuataras in the population there.
No Kapai Tuataras for them. But also off the back of this, which sort of does relate to what we were saying about the staffing and the meaningful staffing in the ECE space. So, on one hand, you're rolling out a very impressive, shiny piece of a resource and making that available to staff. On the other hand, we have the committee announcement that denied pay parity was important for our early childhood teachers, didn't we?
Yeah, and I've gone through like a range of feelings about this one.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, there's just a huge part of this that just makes me angry because we think that we kind of get to a particular kind of shared understanding around the importance of teachers as professionals, and that actually we shouldn't be breaking kids up by the size of their shoes. And so what we've seen is an announcement from the funding review group with a recommendation that we should walk away from pay parity for early childhood teachers. And so for the longest time since the late 90s, we have had primary, secondary, and then ECE teachers all working off the same kind of pay spine.
yeah,
Uh, and I think we just have to be really clear. This is just a cash grab for private
yeah,
ECE
yeah,
providers. Um, Everybody will know that staffing costs are the most significant part of any operations, and if they want to cream more profit out of these centres, then they're going to have to go after teacher wages. And it's ironic when you are talking on one hand around the need to upskill teachers, around being able to bridge some of these gaps with oral language acquisition, and then at the same time they're wanting to weaken the same group of teachers. We know that we've got long-standing issues around qualifications in early childhood and moving to 100% qualified.
yeah.
Uh, and I think there was lots of us that were hoping, probably naively, that out of a funding review, what we would have actually seen is teacher wages separated.
Yeah, yeah.
Of
So you
the,
had to be qualified to get those wages, which is absolutely fair. Yeah,
oh, but also that early childhood sector would go in the direction of primary and secondary,
yeah,
uh, having staffing costs set at FTE, not a dollar bid value.
yeah,
um, in a way that an early childhood centre wouldn't then have to trade off staff and costs against curriculum and power and rates and
yeah,
that other stuff, like we do get in primary and secondary. And I suspect there's probably a little warning label there as to what a future national-led government might want to do around coming after bulk funding, because we
yeah,
know that in the way that they view the education sector has never really gone away. Heke Parata tried to have a go at it, and I suspect if they can get away with it in ECE, they're going to feel emboldened to come after primary and secondary.
yeah. And I mean, I do worry that an emboldened second term government could undo quite a few things in that whole space. Like I still stand by my claim that I don't know if boards of trustees, our school boards, will survive another term, particularly in the way they operate at the moment. And I really worry. I was listening to the political roundup on RNZ this morning. On Sunday morning, and they were talking about the reviews around medical councils and this whole idea of, the controlling of the medical staff to have to be politically neutral, and some of that stuff. And that's the other thing that I think they'll come after if they get a second term. I think, the likes of these sort of platforms where we can talk so openly about our thoughts and feels around certain policy, I suspect that the days are numbered that we'll be able to do this. What's your
I don't
thoughts
know.
on that front?
Well, I think we can definitely expect the likes of the Free Speech Union to come in right behind us. Um, I'm sure that they're going to be there for us. Uh, yeah, look,
That makes me feel a little bit ill, Liam.
yeah, that's right. It's one of those ones where you question whether or not you're doing the right thing if the Free
Yeah,
Speech Union are on your side. But look, I'm sure that this is going to be something. I mean, everything that we have seen from this government is around centralising decision making and power in
yeah,
either the government ministers or the ministry. And I think the kind of last area that they need to go after is going to be kind of individual teachers. And so
yeah,
I think it's likely that we're going to see principals moved under the kind of public service more
yeah,
closely than they currently are, and that teachers will follow,
yeah,
because that does seem to be the kind of last space of resistance. And so we're going to be fine because we'll just use the kind of voice and pixel modulators over us, and so
Yeah,
it'll.
yeah, no, absolutely. We're going to be, and those blind AEC pieces are going to go off the charts, aren't they? They're going to be a
Yeah.
whole lot of generic AEC published articles from here on in. And actually, this leads nicely, Liam, into my little reading list. Can I share some of my reading lists that I have sitting next to me?
Go
I'm
for it.
I'm I'm a big believer in trying to commit. Like often when I try and give up things, like I do things like do 100 days without op shopping. If anyone knows me, I've got an op shopping problem. And I like to declare it online if I'm going to give it up for 100 days. So this is my attempt to do that in the reading world. I'm going to declare the books that I'm going to attempt to read over the holidays because I have declared these school holidays Claire's reading holidays. Okay. So I thought, and I just felt like actually this book was the right one to introduce first because it relates to exactly what we were talking about. So I have had Rosemary Hipkins' Lifelong Learning for a Post-Truth World sitting on my bedside, looking at me for months now. So that's my hot to trot book that I'm going to be reading. So I'll report back, okay, here about when I've read that. Then of course I've got Guy Claxton and Emily Pohl's Bodies of Learning. For those of you who haven't watched our interview with Guy Claxton, if you haven't, I encourage you to go back and have a listen because that was an absolute cracker. And that's something that I keep finding myself referring to him and the concepts in this. We've been having big discussions at school recently about how we position AI because we're passionate about I'm passionate about the fact that we need to have an AI curriculum at school when we teach young people how to use AI, but also how to put AI to one side and how we engage back in that embodied learning that Guy talked about so clearly. And in that talk and that idea that we get them to put the devices down, we get them to move, we get them outdoors, we do all of those sort of good things. So Bodies of Learning is on my list. And then this, slightly different. Can I do a shout out for this fantastic book? This is by Rachel Davies and Angela Meyer, Money, 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 Money. It's actually a feminist book about finances, so feminist finances. It's quite a cool genre. I love Dame Marilyn Waring. She is the hero in the feminist finance space. But also a shout out to Ange and Tanya and the Project Gender Crew, who launched their Shortchanged podcast this week. Absolutely banger, looking at that gender pay gap in New Zealand. And then I'll just share one. This is one fiction one that I'm working on at the moment. This is a follow up to this author wrote Hula, and this is the Puhaku, and it's Hawaiian. It's a mix. She always does historical fiction mixed with contemporary, and they're always like it jumps back and forth between the history of Hawaii and modern day, but real parallels to a lot of New Zealand literature that does sort of sort of same thing where it leans into this incredible sort of indigenous narrative, both contemporary and historical. But if you haven't read Hula, absolute cracker of a book, and I recommend this one. And then I do have some lighter reading that I'm going to be working on as well. I have no chance of getting through all of those books, but they're going to be sitting next to me, staring at me these holidays. What are you going to do these holidays, Liam?
So just setting off here, I've got 200 A3 laminating sheets because I'm pulling together wall displays for our entire school. So that'll be a nice afternoon of watching something and doing that. But me and my son are up to chapter 5 on the very last Harry Potter book.
Oh,
And so
nice.
he's kind of deep into it.
Is it
What,
his first time through it?
yeah, yeah. So we started.
So even though she's cancelled, we're still okay with Harry Potter, eh? Is that how it
Well,
works? You're not into cancelling people, are you, Liam?
well, let's go and kick off that conversation at the start of a new podcast because I'm not sure we can get into it. But I was going to check with you though. Is what are your thoughts on the commercialization of op shops over the last couple of decades?
Oh, I have really conflicted thoughts. It really frustrates me. Like I'm really aware that I op shop. Like I do it because I've grown up op shopping. I've always loved it. I love fashion. I love playing dress ups, and for me, an opportunity to, forage and hunt and be creative. But, I'm also really aware that I'm not necessarily the person that needs it most. So, and I've always had the belief that actually probably what I'm looking for and what I'm doing is not taking clothes out of the hands of the people that are there by necessity. But what I do get upset about is the sort of SPCA op shops are actually some of the worst in some of the main centres. Some of them have got ridiculous, like the curation and the prices. Like, ask, a reasonable sum of money. Have a section that's a designer section and ask for a reasonable sum of money. But the sort of the ridiculous sort of curation and absolutely expensive prices that prices is out of the market of the very people that need it, I find really disappointing. I've got no problem with people like buying and flipping, and I always think that I think of it as rent because more often than not, my clothing goes back into the same ecosystem that I took it out of. So I'm quite happy to just pay a sum of money to borrow the piece of clothing for a period of time, adopt it, wear it. Some of it stays forever. A lot of it goes back into and I, for the most part, a lot of any op shop stuff, I just stick straight back in the bins and straight back to the op shops and donate it again. So that's not a biggie. But yeah, it's an interesting scene. Like,
Yeah.
I actually applaud the young people who have, like one daughter's a real Depop seller, and the other one used to work in sort of high-end vintage designer recycle. But that was a store that was done for that, and that was selling on behalf of others. So the prices they were asking were fair, and people were getting money. It's the ones where they're getting everything donated, and then they're asking these outlandish prices, which just doesn't seem to make sense when it's donated goods. And actually, we then have op shops who don't have capacity to take more stuff. And it's just like, actually, sell them cheap. Just move more stock through. Sell it cheap.
Just
But
because
yeah, I love op shopping. If you haven't, have you do take your kids op shopping?
Um, yes, but it was a huge part of what we did when we were in America,
Yeah,
traveling around for 6 months.
yeah.
The Goodwill stores were just like amazing places to go and find out so much about US culture.
Oh, 100%.
It was just,
100%.
yeah. And so we would just quite often go browsing, and we would go and get a bunch of toys or learning resources that we would use, and then we would just give them back to the next Goodwill that we got because
Yeah,
we only
and
had
that's the
limited
thing, when it
stuff.
is that circular economy where it's going back in, and like I did it from day one with my girls where, like I've always been someone who enjoys crafting and making and sewing and all the rest of it. And, you go into normal shops now and patterns and fabric is absolutely exorbitant, but you can buy the most amazing fabric and patterns if you fossick in the back of an op shop. So yeah, I'm I have to admit, I probably won't get through my books because I probably will end up op shopping most days, but
Look, it
I'll try and find some kind of balance,
just
Liam.
feels like we have drifted from a time when the 16-year-old Liam could cram 4 full suits into a plastic bag and pay $3.
See, I bet they were best. Some of the best dressed were op shops and homemade on Friday night at the ball.
Good on them.
Thumbs up.
Cool. Hey, we are going to be taking a break for school briefs during the term break,
Yes,
but we'll be back in the first week. But in that time, we are recording a few Learning on Tap.
we certainly are.
episodes, so look forward for the release of that.
And yeah, just want to wish everyone a really restful and well deserved holiday because that was one hell of a long term. Hope you have a great time. Enjoy your time off and make sure you look after yourselves.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.